Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be connected again. On behalf of the NBSAP Forum, I welcome you all to the fifth webinar session in the Greening Consumption and Production Massive Online Open Course. Today's webinar will focus on sustainable commodity supply chains and partnerships at IKEA. I'm Hina Ahmed, your course coordinator and co-facilitator. I most warmly welcome you all to this webinar session. This webinar is hosted by Simon Hensel Thomas. Simon is the sustainability leader for the Inter-IKEA group. Simon helps to drive IKEA's approach to being people and planet positive. And his team lead the development of various strategies and approaches to address social and environmental issues in the supply chain. Simon also leads the WWF and IKEA Conservation Partnership, which focuses on transforming the wood and cotton commodity sectors, one of the largest of its kind globally. Simon has been working in the field of sustainability for nearly 15 years with a specialization in sustainable agriculture. Prior to his current position, he was the head of sustainability at the Body Shop International, which then became part of the L'Oreal Group. He has a master's in business strategy and sustainability from the University of London. IKEA is the largest home furnishing business in the world. Week 5 webinar will discuss IKEA's sustainability strategy, People and Planet Positive. The initiative was launched in 2011 with ambitious goals to transform industries in the value chain and life at home for people across the world. Securing sustainable sources of key raw materials, such as wood and cotton, is critical for IKEA's business, especially in an increasingly resource-constrained world. This webinar and subsequent discussion will focus on IKEA's approach to sustainable sourcing of commodities, including certification, market transformation, and partnership programs. Welcome, Simon, and thanks for accepting this invitation. We are thrilled to have you here today. As usual in our sessions, I would like to remind you all of certain rules and dynamics in the NBSAP Forum webinar session. Microphones will be muted during the presentation. This reduces interferences and facilitates the communication. We will have a 30 to 45-minute presentation followed by a question and answer session. Please send us in advance your questions or raise your hand in the control panel of GoToWebinar. If you want to speak and the connection allows it, we will open your microphones during the Q&A session. As many of our participants are not English native speakers, me included, I would like to remind our speaker the importance to talk slower. This fosters the comprehension among our practitioners from around the world. Now I will transfer the webinar to Simon. Please enjoy this session. Over to you, Simon.
Yes, thank you very much. And I hope everyone can hear me clearly. I always find webinars difficult because I can't see your faces, but I'm really very grateful to be here. And I will try and speak slowly and clearly. And I have a few slides just to set up the discussion, but I'm very much looking forward to lots of questions from you and some interaction, because I think that's probably where we will get the most value from the session, or where you will, and I will as well, because I'm sure you have lots of very good input as well. So I will start with my slides, and I wanted just to explain a little bit about IKEA, and I'm sure many of you will know who IKEA is, but for those of you who don't, as was said in introduction, IKEA is the largest home furnishing business in the world. We started in the forest in Sweden in a place called Älmhult, And now we are in many countries around the world and continuing to grow. Just very quickly about myself, you could probably tell from my accent, I'm British. I'm very proud to say that having lived in 5 years in Sweden, I'm soon to become joint nationality Swedish as well, which when we are going through horrible Brexit negotiations and discussions, I'm trying to pretend that I'm more Swedish than British at the moment. So yeah, really, and I've been in IKEA now for 5 years, and my role, I think, was covered in the introduction. A lot of what I do is around our partnerships and how we work with external organizations, particularly around commodities such as cotton and wood and others as well. So I will tell you a little bit about IKEA and our sustainability strategy, People and Planet Positive. And the first thing to say is that the IKEA vision itself is very much around what we call the many people. And we believe that sustainability should not just be for a few, it should be for the many. So why should sustainability be something that is expensive, that only the rich can afford? We believe that really we should take that almost that choice away and make everything that we do for our customers sustainable. And because of that, we have a sustainability strategy called People and Planet Positive. And this was introduced a few years ago. And actually, most of the targets run until 2020, but so we are in the process of refreshing this. But the strategy has 3 pillars. One is around helping our customers to live a more sustainable life at home. If you think we have over 750 million customers visiting our stores every year, we have around 1 billion customers visiting IKEA.com. This is an amazing opportunity for us to inspire and work with our customers to help them to save energy in the home, reduce water, and help them to recycle their waste. So this is a really important part of our role as a retailer to help our customers to live more sustainably at home. The second pillar is really the most kind of valuable or relevant for today, which is around energy and resources. And we talk about being energy and resource independent and producing more renewable energy than we use, and also sourcing resources sustainably. And I'll talk a lot more about that one. But of course, we mustn't forget people in this as well. And this I always say the last but not the least change driver is about people and communities and how we help them to live a better life. And this is not just in our own operations, of course, but also throughout our supply chain, down to the farmers that help to grow the cotton and help to harvest the wood that then gets used in our products.
Simon, I apologize. Yeah. Could you be a little bit away from the microphone because the sound is not coming out that clearly?
Sure. Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Good. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, no problem. So I hope everyone heard that. So this is our sustainability strategy, and sustainable resources and the way we source commodities for use in our products is really a very important part of that strategy. Just a little bit about our impact. And I think this is really interesting to know that, of course, IKEA has a unique business where we have a full value chain approach, and from extraction of the raw materials all the way to the way customers use our products. We of course have an environmental and a social impact. And generally, with most environmental issues in particular, what we find is that the impact is greatest at the raw material extraction phase and then in the customer use phase. And this is especially true for energy use for CO2, but also you could apply it, I think, also to water, for example, as well. Is the sound quality better now? Can you just... You're probably on mute.
I'm unmute now, but yeah, maybe a little bit louder. That would be super helpful. Thank you so much. This
Louder. Okay.
is the what you have right
Yep.
now. What you're to me, yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. Just tell me again if it's not so good. So of course our direct operations, our stores, for example, have an environmental impact, but by far the biggest impact is all the way back to the raw material stage, and then also in that customer use phase. So if you think of a washing machine, for example, you're talking about heavy impact in the raw materials that go into that washing machine, and then the use phase, customers using water and using energy as well. So this is very important when we think about our sustainability strategy and how we prioritize our actions and how we focus. And then, of course, we should not ignore our direct operations because we have a responsibility there. But if we want to maximize our impact, then we need to focus throughout the full value chain. So I wanted to talk about IKEA's two biggest materials from a sourcing perspective. So as you can imagine, wood, how many of you have been into an IKEA store, but many of our products are made from wood. And wood is by far our biggest material, and it's one that we really, really pay very close attention to, not just from a legality perspective, but also from a sustainability perspective. And I don't know if this figure will mean much to you, but excluding the use of our paper, actually, this was our wood use last year, of round wood equivalent wood use. And how much wood is that? Well, it's a lot of wood, and we've got various ways of describing how much wood this is. But in terms of land space and hectareage, we often think, a small country in Europe, or if you line up some of logging trucks from Sweden, it would get halfway around the world to Asia with the wood on those trucks. So this is a super important part of IKEA's impact, and one that we really want to make sure that our wood is sourced sustainably. Wood is also identity. So like I said, actually more than half of our purchase value, we say, but also half of all of the IKEA products include wood-based materials. So we have a responsibility, but also our customers are seeing this, and also our business is dependent on securing sustainability of our wood, because without wood there is no IKEA. So it's not just the right thing to do for the people and for the planet, but it's also important for our business that we have a very focused agenda on the sustainability of our wood. I also wanted to talk a little bit about cotton, and cotton is the second biggest raw material in IKEA, and I think we are the biggest single buyer of wood outside the pulp and paper sector, and I think we are one of the biggest buyers of cotton. So this is mainly in textiles within IKEA, so home furnishing textiles, things like pillowcases and quilts and etc. So you will see cotton is a very big material for us, and again we have a very focused and high level of responsibility to make sure that the cotton we secure is the cotton that we source is sustainable. I show this slide really just so you can understand the complexity of the cotton supply chain, and we could show a slide like this for the wood supply chain as well. Of course, IKEA doesn't source cotton or wood. We have direct relationships with our suppliers, and they in turn source from finishing and weaving organizations, and then of course you have the spinning and the ginning, and the impact in the field is really quite a few steps removed actually from the IKEA business. So this doesn't mean we can turn down our responsibility, but it does mean that we have to be very careful about how we influence that supply chain, because it's not necessarily feasible that we ourselves go and audit to these farms. We need to work with others to do that. Can I just do a sound check now, because I want to make sure that I'm being heard. Is the sound at a good level now? I know you're on mute, but maybe you could. I'll advance to the next slide.
Yes, the sound is great. Thank you.
Okay, good. So then what do we actually do about that? Well, I'll talk about wood and cotton and also a little bit about palm oil. So we have targets. If you think of the complexity of those supply chains, what we need to do is work. The primary way we work through these commodities is through certification schemes. And so for wood, we work with some of you may have heard of this, the Forest Stewardship Council, so FSC. And we also have a target around recycled wood. And we've said that by 2020, 100% of our wood should come from either FSC certified sources or recycled sources. In some geographies, this is easier than others. So in some areas, there is a high availability of FSC certified or recycled wood. In others, there is not. So we need to work to develop the certification of currently uncertified areas of forest. And that means working with governments, it means working with forest plantation companies and also with our suppliers to help to certify increasing areas of land to FSC certified standards. Then with cotton, we work with a Better Cotton Initiative, which again, some of you may have heard of, BCI. We also work with farmers who are working towards BCI certification and other schemes that we feel are equivalent. And then for palm oil is a material which many of you will know is highly contentious, potentially has a very bad impact on the environment if it's not grown in the right way. IKEA is a relatively small buyer of palm oil, but we use it mainly in our candles and to some extent in our food. And we have, again, a program where we make sure that our suppliers source 100% RSPO certified palm oil in our candles. So as you can see, the main approach, at least the first step for us, is to work with these certification schemes to really get down to the farm level for these commodities. What I would then say is, because our responsibility and our direct relationship is with our suppliers, in order to make sure that these supply chains are sustainable, we have to work a lot with others. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why we do that. And we work with partners. So we have a long-standing partnership with WWF to really help us, and others as well, but WWF is the biggest partnership we have. And the partnership focuses on forestry and cotton and how we, like I said, how we can develop those supply chains, how we can develop more FSC certified wood, how we can work with governments, and how we can also train farmers. So it's all very well asking your suppliers for a certified material, but in order to help farmers to actually become certified, you need to work with training and capacity building as well. So the WWF partnership helps us to do that, and I've highlighted a few things here of why we partner with external organizations on commodities. And some of that is about, here you can see practical delivery, but it is a lot about this overcoming barriers outside our influence. So we're talking here about a whole industry, which is cotton or it's forestry. And in order to help IKEA, but also the wider world, we need to really work with others to transform what is potentially an unsustainable commodity into one that is sustainable. And the WWF partnership helps us to do that. And of course, IKEA's buying volumes and our incentives towards suppliers to move towards certified materials do that. But we also need to do a bit more with our partners to help speed that transition to sustainable commodities. Just a little bit about some of the things that we've achieved, and I use this slide not just to kind of boast about IKEA achievements, but also to show what can be achieved through partnership in commodities. And here, just to highlight a couple of these examples, you can see that through the partnership we have contributed to a lot of increasing areas certified managed forests. So I think it's more than this now. This number is changing all the time, but around 35 million hectares of FSC forest is now certified that wasn't before the partnership. And some of those volumes are coming into the IKEA supply chain. Some of them are not actually, and some of the FSC certified material is actually going into other supply chains, which is good. We feel that's something we've contributed to. We've also helped to train, I think this number again is different, but around 100,000 farmers. And we've trained those, this is in the cotton fields, to use less pesticide, less water, and also ultimately to increase the farmers' profit margins. Then, of course, some of the other areas here, for example, improving national forest policy in Europe, and more responsible timber trade across borders. This is where the partnership begins to look not just at the IKEA value chain, but also outside it, and how we can, like I said before, contribute to market transformation outside the IKEA value chain. So, yeah, I also, what's really important is that it's not just a benefit to IKEA, it's not just a benefit to other companies, but we also need to think about farmers, because ultimately, it's the farmers that are growing these crops, and we want the farmers to benefit as well. And just some examples here with the cotton projects. In 2016 in India, through the Better Cotton Initiative, these are some of the impacts that we saw for farmers. So the first one is actually one of the most important. It's through working with this system that ultimately improves an impact on environment. We also see farmers improve their profits, which of course is an incentive for them to continue working with the system. They use less pesticide and fertilizer, and the water figure here, I've seen this higher actually. It can, depending on the area, go up very high, and almost I've seen 20, 30, 40% less water. And of course then an increase in yield, which ultimately then improves the gross margin. So this is important, because I think the danger with some sustainable commodity approaches is that you forget the farmer in everything, and we really don't want to do that with our work. And some certification schemes can exclude farmers, and especially smallholders. So we want to make sure that we don't do that. So that was actually all the slides I wanted to talk about in terms of our main materials, cotton and forestry. And I hope that's given you some food for thought, and I hope to take many, many questions. Then just to finish, we are actually involved in a partnership with UNDP on palm oil through the Green Commodities Program. It's called the Sustainable Palm Oil Initiative. And really this is a very important point, is that businesses can only achieve so much through their own value chains and also through certification. And ultimately what we want is good, when you talk about issues like deforestation, for example, we really want good land use planning at a government level, at a national level, but also at a provincial level, because ultimately that's the way that we're going to have sustainability within these commodities for the long term. So this partnership with UNDP is really about how we work with the Indonesian government on some of these issues to make sure that we're not just taking a certification route, but we're thinking about the bigger picture and how government set deforestation and land use planning regulations and how those fit into our objectives. And this is, like I said, particularly on palm oil, it's really around deforestation and how we drive to a zero deforestation world from commodity production. So it's a really good example. I would please have a look at, if you don't know already, have a look at the UNDP Green Commodities Program and the Sustainable Palm Oil Initiative, because it's a very good example of where companies are working with governments on reducing deforestation from commodities. So I'm going to stop there, and I think I've taken my 20 minutes, we said, and really, really happy to take questions and have a discussion. So I will hand over to the host.
Many thanks, Simon, for sharing your valuable time with our participants. This was an extremely interesting presentation. and will be very helpful for our course participants during week 5 of the course. Now, I would like to invite our attendees to share their questions, doubts, and comments in the question box, or press the raise your hand tab to participate in the question and answer session. Please use the control panel of the GoToWebinar platform. We can open your microphone or read your question depending on your preference. I strongly encourage you to ask questions. It's a privilege to have Simon with us today. Please don't hesitate. We can all learn from each other. Asking questions to initiate discussion is one step forward towards it. The first hand raised is by Camilla Cavallari. Camilla, I'm going to unmute you now. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, Camilla, I can hear you.
I'm sorry, we have a construction here at work. Well, my question is with regards to the social pillar of sustainability. I'd like to know, Simon, if you could share with us a little bit about your initiatives regarding fair work or conditions of work, not only regarding IKEA employees, but also your suppliers' employees, since we are considering the life cycle approach on this.
Very good, very good question. Yeah, and here we come into the complexity of the supply chain. So, I mean, for IKEA direct suppliers, we have a very well-established code of conduct called IWAY, which has been around for almost 20 years, and we're continually improving that and actually widening the scope of that. And there we look at issues like working time, we look at minimum wages, we look at health and safety, and we also look at environmental criteria as well. There we have a team of auditors, almost 100 auditors, that then goes in and audits our direct suppliers, and then gives ways to improve. And ultimately, if a supplier is not meeting our commitments, then we will phase that supplier out. But of course, the preference is to work with that supplier to try and improve their performance. The reason we started IWAY back in the 90s was because of we found some child labour. We found a case of child labour in our supply chain in India, and since then we've been on this journey to eradicate child labour, but also other forms of human rights violations, like forced labour as well, and other social issues. So that's really how we take our approach with direct suppliers. We then have been in the process of asking our suppliers to push IWAY requirements down to our sub-suppliers. And we've taken a risk-based approach. So where we feel the greatest risk is, we've asked our suppliers to roll IWAY out and to take the responsibility for IWAY down with other suppliers. And so that has happened in some geographies and in some commodities as well. But if you think about something like cotton and forestry, IWAY, to some extent, in forestry, we look at the legality of the wood, but and in cotton as well, we do, like I said, go sometimes to sub-supplier level. But really, when we talk about the farmer level, we're relying on the certification scheme itself. So FSC, although it's an environmental standard, also has social criteria within it. So there are elements of things like land use rights and working conditions down at the plantation level that FSC does also verify. And the same goes for BCI. BCI is also a social standard. And the RSPO criteria also includes many social criteria as well. So I would say that those standards can always be strengthened. So we're always working to try and improve those standards and in all possible ways make sure that those standards are at least equivalent to IWAY, and that we have the same standards on ourselves, on our suppliers, and across our value chain. But of course, some of these industries are in different stages of development. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Happy to take any more questions on it. But it's a big topic, that one.
Thank you, Simon. The next question I'm going to read out from the question box is from Grace Stead. Simon, you mentioned that you encourage suppliers to also comply, but what motivates them to change? Is it due to the connection to IKEA, or do they see the bigger picture, or do they do it because they believe in it, or why? What motivates them?
Very good question. And this is a critical question, actually, because where we see the greatest success with suppliers is when they do exactly what you said second, is when they have a mindset shift and when they really believe in what we're trying to say in Iway and where they share our values. This is where we see sustainable change. When we see more of a compliance approach, suppliers trying to tick boxes, and of course there are some issues where that works, but most of the time we see that this is not a truly sustainable change. And I'd see, in all honesty, we see a mixture of all of these things. Generally, with IKEA, our average length of relationship with suppliers is very high. So it's over 10 years is the average relationship between IKEA and a supplier. And if you compare that to other industries, you'll see much lower, for example, in apparel, or you'll see much shorter relationships with suppliers. So having these long-term relationships with suppliers enables us to try and create this mindset shift and work with them and develop together and really try and share our values with each other. And that's when we see the greatest movement on social and environmental issues as well, rather than just kind of box ticking to, stay in the business with IKEA. But of course we do see that as well. But yeah, really our aim and intention is to develop together and move towards a kind of joint business vision of positive and social and environmental impact.
Thank you, Simon. That was an interesting insight. The next question is by Leba Halofaki. Apologies if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Thank you, Simon. Can you give a general list of cotton products by IKEA? And do you supply these items to Fiji, South Pacific, and any wood furniture to Fiji?
Unfortunately, we don't have any stores in Fiji, no. But some examples of cotton products would be, pillowcases, home textiles, quilt covers, curtains, blinds, also some rugs, things like that. So hopefully, maybe sometime in the future we will come to Fiji, but at the moment we don't have any stores there. I think your nearest store would probably be Australia maybe, or even East Asia. So if you go to China or Taiwan or Southeast Asia. So I think you're in between two continents there with no stores, unfortunately.
Thank you so much, Simon. The next question is by Cynthia Flor Santana. I would like to know if IKEA has thought about to close the loop of their products. Do you think in some point in the future, IKEA could be recycling or reusing some material or parts from their products?
Very good point. And this really is absolutely critical for IKEA and our development. It's something that it's not just a sustainability issue, but it's a business issue. So if you think of a business that is heavily reliant on raw materials for our products, then there is a very strong business interest in securing the materials that we use and maintaining the cost of those as well, and then not reducing the cost of those ultimately, so that we can offer affordable products for our customers. So we call this circular economy, or a circular IKEA, and there are many, many different projects ongoing now. They go from the very small, so making sure that we use as much recycled content materials as possible, all the way through to working out how customers can return products, and we can then disassemble those products and reassemble the materials into new products. We also are looking at how we can move from a product situation to a service provision, and maybe the IKEA business model in the future will, of course, always be about products, but also services and refurbishment, for example. Could we come to a situation where customers can take apart parts of their sofa and buy different modules and fit those to their existing frame? So there's many different areas of circular economy, and product take back by customers is one, but there are many other different areas as well. So yeah, I think it's really good that you raised that. And ultimately, I mean, to reduce IKEA's impact, if we can get a circular IKEA, then of course we need to use less raw materials, and we need to use less cotton, and we need to use less wood. So it's absolutely at the core of the future of IKEA is this whole circular economy approach. Yeah, very good question.
Thank you, Simon. I once again want to strongly encourage our participants to raise their hands and ask the questions, although I'm reading it from the question box. It'll be a good experience for you to interact with the speaker. The next question is by Teddy Twine Teddy. Sustainable life at home seems to be one of the tipping points for sustainable consumption and production. However, this seems to fetch less attention. What exactly is IKEA doing at this level? Over to you, Simon.
Yeah, very good question. And if you remember the graph at the beginning about where our impact is, I mean, this is really critical because the customer use phase is where we have a lot of impact. And the key for us here is we don't want to preach or to pretend that we should know how customers want to live their lives. What we want to do is inspire customers. We want to provide them with solutions, smarter solutions. We want to help them reduce their energy use, but also produce renewable energy. So in Europe, in the last few years, we've actually started selling solar panels to our customers. So customers were coming in for a dining room table, and they left the store with a solar panel system for their home. We also help with waste recycling solutions, and also reducing water mainly through the way we design the products. But yeah, this is a really super important area, and I guess I think where we need to move from is we've provided some good solutions in the past, but they've been quite focused and small. And what we're really now looking at is really how can IKEA inspire customers to firstly envision what a sustainable life looks like, and then also provide the solutions for that in the home. Not preaching, not kind of dictating, but inspiring and working with our customers. So no, this is a very critical strand of our strategy, and we could give a presentation on that area in itself. But I think we should be humble about what we've done so far. We've taken some small steps. I think the solar panel example is a really good one. LED lights is a really good one as well. We took the decision to phase out all non-LED lights in the last, I think it was 2 years ago. And it might seem small, but the environmental impact of that was huge. And we made those LED light bulbs affordable for our customers so they could buy them. So we have taken some good small steps, but there's a lot more to do. And the whole issue of consumption and overconsumption, we know is ever present. And how can IKEA contribute to sustainable consumption as well as production is very much at the front of our minds as we construct a sustainability strategy to 2030. Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. It's really interesting to understand so much about IKEA's work, and it's beginning to be my favorite brand. So the next question is by E. Ling Lee. Simon, what will be your comments on the existing supply chain of oil palm and other main commodities in Malaysia?
Yeah, and I mean, for those of it that don't know about palm oil, I'm sure many of you do, but most of the palm oil in the world comes from Malaysia and Indonesia, and the same goes for IKEA's candle supply chain, and that, of course, is changing, and we're now seeing more palm oil production in Central and South America and also in West Africa. But at the moment, most of the palm oil used in IKEA products, candles, is coming from Malaysia and Indonesia. And I mean, I would not want to generalize, but I mean, like I said in the slides, we've made sure that all of the palm oil we source comes from ISPO certified palm. But we still see that there are ways to improve that, and especially on the issue of deforestation. And we saw in the last few years that the horrible forest fires in Indonesia mainly, and forest fires burning to plant palm, and this is something that we don't want to be associated with, and we want to see change. And I think RSPO is a very good tool for that in Malaysia as well as Indonesia. But we need to constantly work to improve that standard, because we feel there are some parts of the RSPO criteria that could be strengthened. And one of the other areas is around smallholders. We also need to be careful that we don't exclude smallholders from the supply chain. And we see in Indonesia and Malaysia that many of the growers that grow palm oil are smallholders. And how do we secure good sustainability standards without excluding them from the supply chain is a big issue. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Simon. The next question is by Mirja Newman. Apologies if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. IKEA ships vast amounts of products around the world. How do you ensure sustainability through this process?
Yeah, very good question. And actually, if you look at the impact slide that I showed at the beginning, the transport is a significant impact, and of course we work very hard on that, and I'll explain a few things in a minute. But it's not the biggest impact. Like I said, the biggest impact is the raw materials and the customer use. But still, transport is a big issue and a big impact. And I mean, I've worked for other companies, and one of the issues we talked a lot about in other companies was air freight. And in IKEA, we generally don't use air freight. It's unusual that we do. Most of the transportation we conduct is land and sea. But still, of course, there is an impact in those areas as well. So we have big programs around, for example, in land transport, around optimization of space. The flat pack. So for those of you who don't know, when you go into an IKEA store, you don't buy the finished product. You buy a flat pack, and then you assemble that at home. And of course, the reason that began was to save money for customers ultimately, because we were able to reduce costs, but it also reduces space. So we're able to optimize a lot of space through flat packing in transport. So you can imagine if we were transporting completed products instead of flat packs, then our transportation would be much, much higher. But still, we work on the optimization of our transport and the planning of it, so making sure that we book that transport in a good, efficient way. We're also looking at alternative fuels, and I think we're at the beginning of this journey, but we have an alternative fuel strategy, so that for the transportation that we do use, we're transitioning over to renewable energy or renewable sustainable fuels where we can. And the other area is what we call the last mile, or it's where we're delivering products into the home or into the store. It's normally in urban environments. And there, of course, we can look at things like electrification and transitioning to much cleaner fuels for that last mile delivery, because there's also a human impact when it comes to pollution. So very good question and a very important topic. And I think just to be humble that we've done some good things. There's something inherently good about the IKEA business model and the flat packing, but of course there's a lot of work to do to optimize efficiency, but also transition to these alternative fuels where we can.
Thank you, Simon. The next hand raised is by Jamie Williams. Jamie, I will unmute you now. Please go ahead and ask your question. Jamie?
Hello, Simon. Thanks for your very interesting talk. As a low-cost, high-volume business which relies on constant consumption and replacements of goods, claiming your products are sustainable and come from renewable sources, does IKEA effectively encourage consumers to replace like with like rather than spending more on long-lasting products?
Yeah, good question, and it's the send. I think it's one I get very, very often, and it's, as you said, it's central to the sustainability proposition of our business. And the way we see it, I think, is there are two elements: so sustainable consumption and production. And of course, with the production bit, we need to do absolutely everything we can to ensure that we are sustainable in the way we produce our products. My opinion is that the consumption one is a bit confused. I think some people assume because a product is low cost, it is poor quality. I think some people also assume because a product is low cost, it's inherently unsustainable, and we disagree with that proposition. And of course, there are ways we can improve durability and quality, and we should do that. But also, to us, there's not a dichotomy between our business model of affordable and durable or high quality. So I think that's the first point. But then I think we generally have a big question around this consumption piece and it cuts across all of the areas, but particularly the first change driver we talked about with helping our customers to live a more sustainable life. What is our vision of a life at home, and how is that going to develop by 2030 with millions more consumers coming into the middle class and buying products, and what is the IKEA vision of a sustainable, healthy, affordable home? And I think we have some work to do there to move to a vision where, like I said, by 2030, maybe people won't be buying a sofa in IKEA and then replacing it however many years later with a new sofa. Maybe they'll be stripping off the cover, stripping off the arms and maybe the feet, and buying new components to that sofa to extend the life of that product. So extending the life of our products is a big area of work for us, which maybe it also comes into offering services like maybe restitching a upholstery cover instead of buying a new one and things like that. So there we get into questions about the IKEA business model and how it's going to develop in the next decade. And there will be changes, and of course, product offerings will remain a core of what we do. But this whole service arena is becoming very important, and this circular IKEA, I think, like I talked about earlier, will be a big part of how we deal with the sustainable consumption question. So yeah, it's a very, very important point, and one we could discuss for many, many hours, but I hope that's a start at least.
Thank you, Simon. The next hand raised is by Grace Stead. Grace, I will unmute you now. Please ask your question.
Hi, Simon. Thanks. It's been a very interesting talk. My question is just around the sustainable palm oil from a cost point of view. So the business that we work in, we're finding it very difficult to motivate why people need to go with a sustainable palm oil. From an environmental point of view, I totally understand, but trying to get it here in South Africa is very difficult. How do you actually go about convincing people that, for business people, that from a cost point of view, although it's more expensive, that they actually need to use it? How do you manage that business side of things?
Yeah, good question. I mean, without going into the specifics on the cost, we actually, I mean, there isn't always an increased cost. So I think that's the first one. In some situations, actually what you need is an investment. So you need to invest in the supply chain, or you need to invest in a development. So maybe it's chain of custody systems, and you need to discuss that with your supplier. But it doesn't always mean an increase in the commodity cost. I think sometimes it does, but not in all cases. Something in IKEA that we're very keen on is we don't believe necessarily in premiums, but we do believe in investing in the supply chain. So, and there I think you can make a very strong business case internally, because supply chain people are very used to talking about supply chain investments, and normally, purchasing directors are very happy to make investments in suppliers when it comes to, for example, automation, improving efficiency, improving safety. So why not in improving security of supply of a commodity, which is in some cases not IKEA because it's for one product range or two, but in some cases for some businesses it's critical. So I think there's a very strong business case around improving the security of supply of what is a highly contentious material. And if you want to go to the reputation argument, you can always go there. I tend not to do that with palm oil, because I feel like the security of supply argument is stronger. Is how can we build our business on a material that is contributing to deforestation and climate change, etc. It just doesn't stack up. I'd rather take those arguments, but of course the reputation argument is another one. Palm oil it's seldom that palm oil is out of the news. Yeah, I think that the business case is multifaceted and very strong. But yeah, don't make the assumption that there is an increased cost, because we didn't always find that with our suppliers.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Simon. I thought you got...
Good.
Okay. So the next question is by Kenneth Omondi. Quality versus sustainability. How does IKEA strike a balance between sustainability and quality, given that in most cases, especially in manufacturing and processing, sustainability is equated to compromise and seen to be leading to low quality?
I have to disagree with you there. And I mean, we have a design principle in IKEA called democratic design. And I wish I'd shown a slide on it, but basically we ask our designers at the design phase to take into account five different criteria, and in the perfect product, all of these things should be equally balanced. And quality is of course in there, and sustainability is in there as well. And then we also have the effectiveness of a product. There's no use in making a highly sustainable chair with two legs. So function is very important. So function, sustainability, quality, and then other areas as well. So in our mind, there is no trade-off between quality and sustainability. And actually, I would argue we've seen cases where with suppliers, sustainability as an issue helps to drive quality. And we've actually seen a link between high performance on social criteria, especially in factories, and reduce cost of poor quality. So we call that COPQ, cost of poor quality. And we see a strong correlation between suppliers performing very well from a sustainability perspective and actually reduced poor quality. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always happen that all of our democratic design elements are in perfect harmony, but that's really what we want when it comes to our products, is that we consider all of those things. And I'm sure there are some cases where there is a conflict in some areas, but not so much for me anyway, between quality and sustainability. Sometimes cost and sustainability, there is a trade-off. Maybe sometimes you need to invest more in order to have a more sustainable material, but less so for me from a quality sustainability perspective. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Simon, for such an interesting insight. The next question is by Elizabeth. Okay, short. I really apologize if I pronounced it wrong. I think you have answered this in bits and pieces, Simon, already, but I would still go ahead and ask it. What are the concrete steps that IKEA has taken so far to promote consumer-facing circular economy schemes?
Yeah, I think I would say that concrete steps so far has been pilot projects. So, for example, in Europe, we've done some we've piloted take-back schemes where customers can bring back products to the IKEA store, and then we try and get those back into the supply chain. We use a lot of recycled content material in our products, but of course that recycled content is not necessarily from the products themselves. It's buying recycled content from the market. So I would characterize it by saying we've done some good pilots where we've done some good initiatives and projects. And now we're at the phase of really trying to understand how we can scale up that approach. And it's really very, very complex, of course. I think we have an advantage in that our products are modular already. So, customers are already assembling them in the home. So if you can assemble a product, you can disassemble it as well. And therefore we have these modular, the materials you can take them apart. So there are advantages to our business model, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done, particularly on the logistic flows, to understand how we can really start closing the loop on some of these materials, and also working out which materials we want to close the loop on and where we want to focus. Because take an example like textiles, there's a huge opportunity with textiles recycling that would have an amazingly positive impact on the planet if you think about the environmental impact of textiles production. But currently we need to work on the technology because we don't yet have all the technology required to take apart the yarn and the thread of textiles. But there's some amazing business opportunities in that for us. So yeah, I would be humble and say it's high on our agenda, moving now from projects to a kind of systematic approach, and it's going to take time.
Thank you, Simon. The next hand raised is by Jamie Williams. Jamie, I'll once again unmute you. Please go ahead if you have any comment or question.
Hello again, Simon. I'm sort of a bit surprised to be called up again. Just following on from the considerations about overconsumption, I just picking up on what you said about some people leaving the shop with a solar panel when they went in to buy a sofa, and that's commendable. But a lot more people, I think, leave with stuff that they didn't know that they needed and probably don't. How can the sort of business model, the shop model of IKEA avoid contributing to overconsumption?
Yeah, it's a very important point, and I think it comes back to there are some things that we do. There's some easy wins, and there are some things that we shouldn't do. And I'm trying to think of some examples, but the packs of multiple products that maybe you don't need a multiple product of. Do you actually only need one of those things? And I'm thinking of a few years ago. I don't know. I haven't seen this recently, but for example, a pack of scissors or something. These kind of high turnover commodities. Do we need to sell them in multiple packs? I think we can be really humble about that and say, let's look at that. But I think it does come back to this creating a vision for a sustainable life at home. What does that look like? And then what is IKEA's contribution to that? Because I think everything falls out of that. And at the moment, like you pointed out, we've done some good things around certain products and certain ranges, but are we getting to the fundamental heart of the IKEA business model and offer, and then I think take steps to address that. I think the perception as well is different in different markets, because I think, Jamie, judging by your name and accent, I think you're English, and I'm English as well. And I think in the UK market there is a perception about consumption, which we see in some other markets, but it's not always replicated in others. So, for example, in China and India, not India yet, sorry, China, India soon, the market perception is slightly different, and this idea of going into an IKEA and coming out with stuff that you didn't know you wanted isn't so replicated across all the markets. But I think we still have to. It's definitely a very, very important part of the whole more sustainable life at home agenda, and how we develop that in the next 10, 12 years to 2030.
Develops because it's such a it's so problematic that so many businesses might be trying to do the right thing in terms of their sustainable supply chains, etc. But essentially, the business is about selling stuff, and it's sometimes very difficult to see how. In terms of IKEA, I realise the corporation as a whole has a different model from most, if not all. But in terms of individual shops, success is going to be measured by the amount of stuff that's sold. And so the temptation is to sell, isn't it?
Yeah, and and in the future, like we talked, this transition to a service-based economy. I mean, if we move away from, we're not going to move away from products, but as we increase the service offering, then I think, then we see a different kind of business model that maybe is more inherently sustainable, because you're offering services and you have a closed system and a circular business model, and I think that will have tremendous impacts. I mean, the change in the next 12 years, because we've been doing this sustainability strategy, we've been kind of revising it in the last year, and looking at what the world will look like in 2030. And I think this whole circular economy piece in particular is going to move dramatically in the next 5-10 years, and we'd really like IKEA to be a part of that development and play the role that we should. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Simon, for the interesting interaction. The next hand raised is by Leba Halofaki. Leba, I will unmute you now. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Hina. Simon, thank you for your delivery from this side of the world. This is from Fiji in the South Pacific, where we don't have IKEA presence. It'll be nice to have IKEA presence, but can you just expand on that, on the people and community, your people and community focus?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, IKEA has an amazing. I mean, we employ hundreds of thousands of people around the world. So not just in our stores, but we also have our own production units. But really, through the value chain, we touch millions of people, from farmers to factory workers to drivers to, I mean, many different people. So I didn't go too much into that on the presentation, but I talked about iWay a little bit in the question session, and iWay is one of the tools that we use to ensure we have a good social impact, mainly in our suppliers. But we also now are looking at I talked about the 2030 strategy, but some of the things that we see really that IKEA needs to take a strong position on, along with other businesses, are how do we contribute to a equal and fair society? And we see now that despite many people coming out of poverty, we still see a very big trend towards increasing inequality in the world. And what role can a business like IKEA play in that? And I think that's a fundamental question that we all have to ask. And one of the ways we can do that is by providing decent work throughout our value chain, and really asking ourselves, what is it that we can do that? And I think IWay and auditing is one way that we can ensure decent work, but there are many other issues in the value chain that we need to tackle. Things like fair wages, for example. So we can see that in some countries, although we're sure that we're paying a minimum wage, maybe in some countries this is not enough to provide a living wage. And so we have a number of programs now looking at the issue of living wages, not just in our own operations, but also throughout our supply chain. Another area that we're spending a lot of focus on is the issue of migrant workers. So we have throughout the IKEA value chain migrant workers, whether it be security guards in stores or cleaning contractors in stores, or factory workers as well. And we have a very big program at the moment around how we can secure the human rights of migrant workers in our value chain. Yeah, that could be a webinar in itself, but it's if you think of a business like, our business mission or vision is about the many people and how we can improve the lives of people by providing affordable furniture. We also have to look after the many people in how we produce our products across the value chain, and we have a strong responsibility there. So yeah, hard to get. We could go into detail on any of those topics, but that was just a quick response.
Thank you so much, Simon. The next question is by two people. It's based on the same concept, by Nicole Benson and Mirja Newman. Does IKEA also have any initiatives to reduce waste, example by avoiding packaging wherever possible?
Yes, good question. And yes, we do. And one of the targets we were discussing as we talk about our strategy for 2030 is, of course, we want zero waste ultimately. Yes, we have active programs around reducing packaging in the kind of design phase, but then also in the transit phase as well. How can we reduce transit packaging, and also where we do use packaging, making sure that it's from sustainable materials, so eliminating things like dangerous chemicals and promoting the use of more sustainable packaging materials. So yes, we do have an agenda on that.
Thank you, Simon. I would encourage our participants to raise their hands to ask any further questions. I think we have successfully covered almost all the questions that there were in the question box, Simon. Thank you so much. I have to say, personally, this is one of my most favorite webinars that I've attended so far.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, then, if there are no other questions, maybe we can wrap up early. Many thanks, Simon, for your time, and thank you all for your participation in Week 5 webinar of the MOOC series. Once again, Simon, I invite you to please share with us any final remarks on the topic or share any recommendations for our audience today.
No, I mean, thank you all for your time. I find these difficult because, like I said, I can't see your faces, but I feel it's been as interactive as it can be, given it's a webinar. And I think you've been great. So I hope I managed to answer your questions, and I like to be as open and transparent as possible. So I hope I was that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Most definitely. I think this has been one of our most interactive webinars, and it was a pleasure to have you. For our participants, we will post the webinar recording on our NBSAF Forum YouTube channel. The webinar recording link, along with a copy of the presentation, will also be posted on the conservationtraining.org course room notice board, sent via email to all MOOC registrants, and posted on the NBSAF Forum homepage. Please don't forget to visit the NBSAF Forum homepage for weekly course summaries posted by our course facilitators in each language. Please don't hesitate to contact me for any questions or support. The NBSAP Forum is a global partnership to support the development and implementation of effective national biodiversity strategies and action plans. It is hosted by the Secretariat of Convention on Biological Diversity, the United Nations Development Programme, and the UN Environment Programme. Don't forget to follow the Sustainable Production and Consumption NBSAP theme. Hope you all enjoyed this session. Have a nice day and night. We look forward to your active participation in this course. And I look forward to meeting you all virtually next week on Wednesday webinar. Thank you, Simon, once again.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. Have a good day.
Thank you.